He didn't know why it kept happening. 3 in the morning, eyes wide open, breath caught, chest tight. He told everyone he was fine. He told himself louder. But silence doesn't knock. It breaks in. I used to think it was just a phase, a stress response, some nonsense about cortisol rhythms or REM cycles. I've said it to hundreds of patients over the years, smiled, nodded, prescribed the usual. But that was before it started happening to me. Same hour, same silence, same feeling like something was dragging me out of sleep by the ribs. It wasn't insomnia. I know what insomnia feels like. That's when you can't fall asleep because something's loud inside you. This was different. I'd be fast asleep, and then wide awake, exactly 3 a.m., heart not racing, no nightmares, just this pressure, like a hand on my chest, not physical, deeper. The room would be quiet, but my mind, not so much, not chaotic, just alert, uncomfortably alert, as if something wanted my attention, like the body was finally giving up its illusion of peace and saying, "We need to talk." That's when I stopped pretending this was a medical issue. We tell people to drink chamomile tea, to meditate, to buy softer pillows. But none of that touches the real problem, because what wakes you up at 3 a.m. isn't physical, it's not your nerves, it's not your diet, it's not even your trauma, not directly. It's what you've buried, and worse, what you've accepted as normal for far too long. You don't wake up because of pain. You wake up because of silence, the kind that eats at you slowly, year by year, until one night, your own mind refuses to play dead anymore. I've seen people collapse from exhaustion but still get up at 6 for a job that's killing them. I've watched women swallow their voices for decades just to keep families from falling apart. And every single one of them, sooner or later, came back with the same question. Why do I always wake up at the same time, night after night? Because your soul doesn't care about your schedule. Because the truth you're avoiding has a louder alarm clock than any iPhone. Because 3 a.m. is when your mask finally falls off. No one talks about this, not really. We love the idea of productivity, growth, healing, but none of that happens until you're honest about what's been rotting inside you. And honesty? That doesn't show up at noon in a therapy session with good lighting and filtered tears. It shows up at 3 a.m., uninvited, unapologetic, and unwilling to leave until you listen. So what is it that wakes you? Guilt? Loneliness? The memory of something you never had the courage to say out loud? Or maybe it's that quiet grief of living a life that looks fine on the outside, but feels like slow suffocation when no one's watching. That hour isn't random. It's the moment your soul finally gets a signal through the noise. No audience, no performance. Just you, and the truth you've been hiding from. I stopped blaming my age, stopped calling it an overactive mind. What I call it now? A final warning, a last attempt from within to stop pretending. Because let me tell you something I've learned the hard way. Your body will shut down what your mind refuses to confront, but it will always give you one last shot, one quiet hour before it does. What if waking up at 3 a.m. isn't a problem to fix, but a message you're not ready to hear? And what if you've already ignored it too many times? It took me years to say this without flinching. You're not waking up at 3 a.m., you're being woken up by something inside you that's had enough. Not enough people admit this. They talk about sleep hygiene. They suggest breathing exercises, apps, noise machines, as if what keeps you awake can be lulled back to sleep with white noise and lavender oil. But this isn't about sleep. It's about something you've refused to feel during the day, So it shows up when the rest of the world goes quiet. There's a moment around 3:07 when the brain tries to trick you back into sleep. It whispers, "Just ignore it. Think of something else. You need rest." But it's too late. You've already seen it. That thought, that name, that regret, that truth that won't wait for the weekend. It doesn't knock, it breaks in. That's not restlessness, that's recognition. Your nervous system doesn't care how successful you are. It doesn't care how many people think you're doing great. It keeps score of everything you swallowed, every no you didn't say, every yes you forced out of fear, every time you let someone stay who should have left. It wakes you because you keep silencing it. And your silence has consequences. The body isn't your enemy. It's the last honest part of you when your voice is gone, when your boundaries are gone, when your choices are no longer yours. So it wakes you, and not gently. There was a woman I once treated, mid-40s, clean labs, normal vitals. But every night, like a ritual, she'd wake at 3:10 a.m., tears already on her face. "I don't even know why," she'd say. "There's nothing wrong." But there was. She just didn't have permission to name it. A husband who controlled her with silence. A family that praised her strength while draining her dry. A life that looked admirable from the outside, but didn't belong to her. She thought she was losing her mind. She wasn't. She was finally hearing it. Let me tell you something real, something no specialist will say on record. The people who wake up at 3 a.m. aren't weak. They're the ones whose truth has run out of places to hide. So it finds them in the dark. That's why you don't wake up at noon with this weight. There's too much noise, too much performance. Daylight makes it easy to pretend. But night is honest, and the hour between 3 and 4 is the most brutal mirror you'll ever face. Some ignore it, some drink it away, some medicate it until they forget what it feels like to feel. But some, and these are the rare ones, choose to face it. Not because they're brave, because they're done running. You can't outrun a truth that lives inside you. You can only pretend until it gets louder. And by 3 a.m., it's screaming. So no, you're not waking up. You're being pulled back to yourself, and it will keep happening until you answer. What if that 3 a.m. silence isn't silence at all, but a question you've refused to answer? And what if ignoring it is the real reason you feel so tired, even after 8 hours of sleep? Does this feel too familiar? If you've ever stared at the ceiling at 3 a.m., wondering what's really keeping you awake, you're not alone. Tell me in the comments, what wakes you up at night? I read every story, and sometimes the answer is hiding between the lines. And if this spoke to something deep inside you, subscribe. Not for advice, but for truth you won't hear anywhere else. They come to me exhausted, burned out, hollow. I see it in their eyes before they speak, and they always say the same thing. But I sleep enough. Why am I still tired? They want blood work, vitamin panels, hormone scans. I do it out of respect. But most of the time, everything looks fine. So I sit back, look them in the eye, and ask the one question no one else will. Who are you pretending to be all day? Because that's what drains people, not a lack of rest, a lack of truth. You don't need more sleep. You need less self-betrayal. You go through your day suppressing every instinct just to be acceptable, to be liked, to keep the peace. You smile when you're uncomfortable. You say yes when you want to scream no. You call it maturity, responsibility, kindness. But what it really is? Survival. And survival is exhausting. There's nothing more lethal to the soul than staying small just to be tolerated. I once knew a woman who ran her own business, raised 3 kids, took care of her sick mother, and still apologized if dinner was late. She collapsed in my office from sheer fatigue, slept 8 hours a night, tracked every habit, and yet she was falling apart. Not because of what she was doing, because of what she was constantly not allowing herself to be. She was never angry, out loud, never selfish, even once, never honest, when it might hurt someone. And that's the problem. The world loves women like that. Quiet, giving, tired. They call it grace. I call it self-erasure. Being tired isn't a mystery when your entire life is a performance. The cost of wearing a mask all day isn't just emotional. Your nervous system pays in full. You carry tension in your jaw from words you never said. Your back aches from pressure you never asked for. Your chest gets tight because you keep holding it all in just a little longer, just until the kids are grown, just until the project's done, just until someone finally sees you. But no one does, because you made it look easy, and people don't help those who seem fine. I need you to hear this from someone who spent a lifetime listening to the pain behind people's smiles. Tired isn't always physical, it's spiritual, and it comes from abandoning yourself over and over in the name of keeping others comfortable. You weren't born to be palatable. You weren't meant to be the peacekeeper in someone else's storm. Your energy isn't infinite. It has boundaries, and every time you ignore them, you pay the price. In silence, in fatigue, in those sleepless 3 a.m. wake-ups where your soul tries to remind you, this isn't the life you were made for. You don't need more coffee. You need permission to be honest, to be angry, to stop explaining yourself to people who benefit from your exhaustion. Truth is, the most tired people I know are the ones who give everything but the truth of what they really need. And that kind of tired? Sleep can't fix it. Silence is rarely neutral. They told you it was strength, that it's better to keep the peace, to rise above, to be the bigger person. But I'll tell you something that'll sit heavy in your chest once you admit it. Your silence isn't keeping peace. It's keeping others comfortable, and someone is benefiting from it every time. I've watched this play out in too many lives. A daughter who doesn't speak up, so her family keeps dumping their chaos on her. A wife who never says what she truly feels, so her husband never has to grow. An employee who nods and smiles while her ideas get stolen, so the boss keeps his favorite yes woman in place. The world loves a woman who doesn't speak. She's easy to manage, easy to praise in public and ignore in private. She holds it all together while everyone else falls apart, and then gets blamed for not being softer when she finally breaks. They call her difficult, emotional, too intense. What they really mean is, she stopped being convenient. Don't make the mistake of thinking your silence is noble. It's a currency, and someone's cashing in. Every time you don't say what hurts you, you're teaching people that hurting you has no consequence. Every time you stay when someone crosses a line, you're erasing the line. Every time you swallow your truth to avoid conflict, you're feeding someone else's comfort with your own peace. They know what they're doing. You just convinced yourself they don't. Because believing that would mean facing a deeper pain, that some people who say they love you actually love the version of you that keeps shrinking. You want to know what's worse than being alone? Being surrounded by people who only value your silence. They clap for your strength, but disappear when you ask for help. They love your kindness, as long as it never comes with boundaries. They admire your resilience because it means they can keep taking without giving back. And still, you stay quiet, not because you're weak, because you were taught that speaking truth makes you too much. You're not too much. They're too used to your silence. I learned this late in life. After losing people I bent over backwards for, after watching others succeed off the back of my restraint. I held my tongue so long it started to bleed, and when I finally opened my mouth, what came out wasn't rage. It was clarity. Some people don't want to understand you. They want you quiet, predictable, pleasant. You being whole makes them nervous. You saying no threatens their illusion. You having needs of your own? Inconvenient. So ask yourself, and answer with your whole chest, who gains when I stay silent? Who am I protecting, and at what cost? Because the longer you keep the peace out there, the more you lose the peace in here. And I promise you, no relationship is worth trading your inner truth for outer harmony. They might not like who you become when you finally speak, but at least you'll be able to sleep. I've heard "I'm fine" more times than I can count. In hospitals, courtrooms, synagogues, waiting rooms, always with the same tired smile, the same little shrug, and always from the people who are anything but fine. It's a shield. It keeps things from getting messy, from going too deep, from exposing just how fragile everything really is beneath the surface. You say, "I'm fine," because it's safer than the truth, because the truth would unravel too much, and you're the one holding it all together. But let's not lie to ourselves. "I'm fine" is rarely about being okay. It's about survival. It's about exhaustion. It's about not wanting to explain what hurts, because you already know they won't listen. Or worse, they'll listen and still change nothing. So you keep it brief, keep it polite, keep it moving, because breaking down would take more energy than you've got left. I once sat across from a woman, late 40s, business owner, always composed. She came in for chronic fatigue. Her vitals were perfect, lifestyle, clean, no red flags. But when I asked how she was doing, she gave me that sentence I've come to hate. "I'm fine, just tired." So I waited. Silence is where truth hides. And then she said it. "I've been holding my breath for 10 years. I don't think I remember who I was before I started pretending everything was okay." That's the cost. You say you're fine long enough, and eventually you forget you're not. You forget what it's like to want, to rest, to cry, and not feel guilty for it. And what's hiding behind "I'm fine" is always something sacred, a need, a wound, a version of you that hasn't been allowed to speak in years. But you silence it, because they need you strong, because they need you stable, because you made it look easy and now you're not allowed to struggle. You ever notice how "I'm fine" always comes out faster when you're close to breaking? That's not a coincidence. That's a reflex, a well-trained defense mechanism. But let me tell you something I wish someone told me sooner. You don't owe anyone your composure. You don't have to look okay to be respected. And you're allowed to not be fine without explaining, justifying, or shrinking. They taught you that your pain was inconvenient, that your anger was too loud, that your sadness was unattractive. But none of that was true. It was just easier for them if you stayed silent. The strongest people I know are the ones who finally got tired of saying, "I'm fine." They didn't explode. They didn't rage. They just got honest. And honesty isn't chaos. It's freedom. It's the first breath after years of suffocating behind a smile. So next time someone asks, How are you? Pause. Don't rush to perform. Ask yourself, who am I trying to protect by lying? And is that protection worth the cost of abandoning yourself? Again? Because one day the words, "I'm fine," won't come out so easily. One day you'll be too tired to pretend. And that day, that's the beginning of your real life. For a long time, I thought something was wrong with me. The fatigue, the silence, the nights where I stared at the ceiling at 3 a.m. and felt like a stranger in my own life. I thought I was falling apart. I thought maybe I missed something, some step everyone else seemed to get right. I saw people smiling, moving, building, talking, laughing, while I felt like I was sinking into a kind of quiet I didn't know how to name. But now I know. You're not broken when you start waking up. You're finally listening. There's nothing wrong with you. You've just stopped pretending. The noise fades. The masks slip. The illusions you've held onto for decades about love, about strength, about what it means to be good, they all start to crack, and in their place you hear something else, something older, something you've ignored. It doesn't yell, it doesn't beg. It just says, softly but clearly, this isn't working anymore. You've built a life around endurance, around being acceptable, around keeping everyone else afloat while quietly drowning yourself. You thought that made you strong. But real strength isn't how long you can suffer. It's how honest you're willing to be with yourself when no one's watching. That's what the 3 a.m. wake-up is. Not a malfunction, not a glitch, not a mystery for doctors to solve. It's your soul tapping your shoulder saying, I'm still here, and I'm not leaving. I've stopped trying to fix it, stopped fighting the nights. Now, when I wake in the dark, I don't panic. I sit up, I breathe, and I ask one question: what am I finally ready to admit? Some nights, the answer is grief. Some nights, it's guilt. But more often than not, it's just a whisper of truth I buried for too long. The truth that I stayed too long in places that emptied me. The truth that I confused loyalty with self-neglect. The truth that I mistook being needed for being loved. And here's what I've learned, late but not too late. You can forgive yourself without forgetting what it cost you. You can speak without shouting. You can leave without hating. And you can rest, not when the world gives you permission, but when you stop giving your peace away in exchange for being understood. No one taught us how to listen inward. They taught us how to function, how to serve, how to survive. But they never taught us how to stop, how to look at our life and ask, does this actually feel like mine? But now you know. That wake-up call? It's not the enemy. It's the beginning of your return to a self you almost forgot existed, one that doesn't need to explain or justify or beg to be seen. You've been here all along, just buried beneath the version of you they found easier to handle. So here's the truth. You're not too much. You're not dramatic. You're not broken. You're just awake now. And that is the beginning of everything that matters. If this found you in a quiet hour, maybe it was meant to. Not to fix you, not to teach you, just to remind you. You were never the problem. You were the one holding it all together in silence. And now, you don't have to anymore.